Hey everyone and welcome back. In today's video, we will be speaking about AWS OpsWorks. Now, OpsWorks is a pretty interesting service primarily because of its direct integration with the configuration management tools like Chef and Puppet. So let's go ahead and understand more about AWS OpsWorks. So AWS OpsWorks is basically a configuration management service that provides managed instances of both Chef and Puppet. Now, as we have discussed that one of the primary advantage of AWS OpsWorks is that we can directly integrate whatever Chef recipes or Puppet scripts that we write with the OpsWorks platform. So let's understand this with a use case where you have a EC2 instance which is getting launched. So after EC2 instance gets launched, you want to do various application layer provisioning, like you want to install Nginx, you want to install PHP, FPM, MySQL packages. Along with that, you need to have a custom SSH configuration. After that, you want to restart to the SSH server. Now, many of you might assume that, alright, you also have a user data in EC2, which can allow us to do precisely this. But user data is definitely good, but it does come with a limitation. Like when you are doing some complex task, like maybe server hardening, then user data is something that might not prove to be useful. So I'll give you an example because we used to do entire server hardening with OpsWorks in one of the organizations that I used to work with. So how it worked was any new EC2 instance that used to get launched, automatically we had the Chef recipe which did lot of hardening related to the Linux instance, and as soon as the server launched, the hardening Chef recipes gets applied into the EC2 instance and it gets restarted. So it was like 100 page of hardening recipe. So writing that 100 pages of recipes is not really idle with user data scripts. So this is the reason why OpsWorks proved to be a great platform in such use cases. Now, when you are learning OpsWorks, there are two important concepts that we have to understand. One is the stack and second is the layer. So if you know about Elastic Beanstalk, the concept is little bit similar, where you have a OpsWorks stack, and even in CloudFormation, you have a CloudFormation stack, and within stack, you can have multiple template based resources. And same goes with OpsWorks, where you have a stack and within stack, you have multiple layer. So you have a Elastic Load Balancer layer, you have a PHP application server layer, you have a database layer. And on each of these layers that you define, you can do various level of Chef provisioning or various customization. So you need to understand what is stacks and you need to understand what are layers. So these are two primary concepts to understand. So let's do one thing. Let's go ahead and go into the practical so that this concept will become much more easier to understand. So this is the OpsWorks service page. Now we have already discussed that OpsWorks supports both Chef as well as Puppet. So we'll look into what exactly it looks like. So the first thing that we need to do is we have to create a stack. So this is the first part. So what I'll do, I'll click on add your first stack. And there are various stacks that you can use. Maybe you can use a Chef 11 base, you can have a Chef 12 base. However, for our example, we will be using a sample stack to look into how exactly it would look like. So I'll select sample stack and I'll click on create stack. So what it will do, it will create a stack and it will also configure various Chef recipes which are needed, and it will integrate those recipes with the layers that are part of the stack. So I'll click on explore the sample stack. So this is the stack. The stack name is called as my sample stack, and within the stack you have layers. Now currently I have one layer called as Node.js app server, and this layer is internally integrated with the Chef recipes. And if you'll see within the layer, I have instances. Currently the instance is stopped. So let me click over here and I'll start the EC2 instance. Now, if you will note, this is very similar to Elastic Beanstalk because we don't really have to go to the EC2 console to start, to stop the EC2 instances. Lot of things can be configured from the OpsWorks GUI itself. So let's quickly wait for the EC2 instance to get started. So these are all the configuration parameters related to the EC2 instance. Now, since this is a Node.js app server and this is configured with the chef recipe to install the Node.js packages. So once this EC2 instance gets started, automatically the chef recipe will get installed in this EC2 instance and things will get booted up. So let's just quickly wait for a moment. So currently the status is booting. So we want it to come out of booting so that we can go ahead and explore what OpsWorks has done in this sample stack. Alright, so now the status has changed from booting to online, and basically now if we go into the public IP, you see automatically you have a Node.js app which is configured and which is installed. So this Node.js app is not installed through user data, it is actually installed through chef recipe. So in order to understand more about that, let me click on this specific layer. So this is the Node.js app server layer, and within this layer there are a lot of configuration like Elastic Beanstalk, very similar to Elastic Beanstalk. Now one of the difference is this recipe page. Now within this recipe page you have a repository URL. So this is the repository URL where the chef cookbook is written to install this specific OpsWorks. So let's do one thing. I'll go ahead and I'll download this specific cookbook. So this has been downloaded. Now let's do one thing. I'll extract this specific in my desktop. Let me call it as chef and I'll extract it over here. Perfect. Now there are a lot of directories over here, and each directory has its own chef recipe. So if you quickly want to check which one this specific Node.js app is referring to, within the deploy stage you have a Node.js_demo. Now if I quickly go here, you have a Node.js_demo, and these are under the recipe column. This is the default.rb file. So this is the contents of the default.rb file, which has a high level overview. So generally, depending upon what exactly you need to be done, you can basically upload it in S3 or you can upload it in a central location, and you can specify the repository URL. Along with that, you can specify the structure for which you want to install it in the EC2 instance when it gets configured. So this is what the custom chef recipes are all about. Along with that, you can do a lot of things, like you can add a ELB, you can associate the EBS volume, even security group related configuration can be done directly from here. You can also do CloudWatch specific configuration. So now if you look, this is very similar to Elastic Beanstalk, where this is like an orchestration tool where from the OpsWorks console itself, you can go ahead and see various kind of statistics related to the EC2 instances. So this is the high level overview about OpsWorks. Do remember that you have a stack, and within stack you have layers. Now you can have multiple layers as well. So I can also have layer, let's call it as PHP app. I'll name it as PHP. And now I have two layers. So this specific layer has a recipe which is associated with installing and configuring of Node.js application server. However, for the PHP app, I can have a different set of recipe which can be associated with installing and configuring PHP related configuration. So this is what the stacks and layers are all about, and this is the overview of the things that are needed for us to understand the things which OpsWorks does. Now one last thing that I wanted to show you is that you can also configure auto-scaling like features, like you have a time-based instances and you also have load-based instances. So in a high-level overview, AWS is trying to give you a very easy-to-use console, which is not only directly integrated with the configuration management tools, but it also helps you to do point and click solution to make your effort quite easier in terms of various features which are needed in a day-to-day operations environment. So this is it about the OpsWorks. So now in the next video, what we'll be discussing is that we'll be discussing more about the OpsWorks specific configuration specific to lifecycle events. So this is it about today's video. In next video, we'll be speaking about the lifecycle events. I hope this has been informative for you and I look forward to see you in the next lecture.